I suppose, Peter, what you'd hope as a member of the public is that if they're at all of any risk to the public, then they wouldn't have been released. And once it's been decided that they're no longer a risk, then they have no chance of any kind of reform or getting on with their life if their anonymity is lifted.
Well, of course, if we look at the case of John Venables, unfortunately, he did pose a risk. He has been convicted of other crimes and recalled to prison as a result of that. The unfortunate position we're in at the moment is that our much beleaguered police service is largely, in some areas, unable to protect us. And we've had laws passed recently so that if you can check the background of a partner to see if they have a criminal background. You can check in certain circumstances to see if there is a paedophile living within your neighbourhood. And I think empowering the public, letting the public know that there are people within their community that they may want to cross the road to avoid is a very good thing.
So, Lindsey, particularly in the case of John Venables, as Peter says, the circumstances have changed. The crime that he committed as a child, he has since gone on to commit more heinous crimes as an adult now. And you still don't believe that people need to know who this man is because he is now a man and he's posing a threat?
Yeah, well, the crimes that he's committed since, they involved watching porn on a computer. Not quite the same as going out hunting children or murdering them. So it's slightly different. And it's
it wasn't
different
just porn, though, was it?
Pardon?
I mean, it wasn't just porn. It was child pornography, and there was other sort of evidence that was found as well, manuals and things like that.
Yes.
Which would imply that he still had a tendency to be to relate to children in a disturbing way.
I don't know the full details of it, and I don't know whether there's any evidence that he put I don't know whether it's wishful thinking or whatever, into action. And no doubt Andrew McFarlane, the president of the Family Division, has heard evidence about all that and will be taking that into consideration.
So why should he still be protected then?
Well, we don't know that he's going to be protected still. But what I'm saying...
Why do you believe he should be?
Sorry.
Well, I'm not so sure about him. I'm talking about children in general. Remember, these children, I'm not talking about a 16-year-old. Venables, for example, and Thompson, originally Thompson, his co-accused, they were under 12 when all this happened. I think they were 10 or 11, weren't they? The adult that emerges out of custody at the end is not the same as the child that went in. There are a lot of effort and therapy and decent treatment because these boys had huge problems domestically before they committed these crimes. A vast amount of resources is put in to these children when they're in custody to make sure, as far as is possible, that they're safe before they're released. And they are judged. But these orders are very rare. We're talking about 6. They don't go before the criminal judge. They're not based on how the trial went or anything like that. They're looked at, as it were, in a family context. What is this person like? What are they likely to be like if they are not anonymous? And what will happen to them if they aren't?
That's the big concern, isn't it, Peter? The vigilante attacks potentially to somebody like one of these child killers who has then grown up and the repercussions that might happen. And that's the real concern.
The criminal history books are not littered with cases of vigilantes taking to the streets and slaughtering people. It's largely a myth. And I trust the public, and I want the public to be informed so they can make informed decisions, so that they can inform their child that if they know there is a young person who's an offender, shall we say, living in the community, that's somebody you need to avoid. That's the kind of company you don't want to fall into.
I suppose the converse to that, Peter, is that somebody who's committed such a terrible crime, they have no chance then of reform, going on into life and potentially putting something back to society, because they would always be known for that. So we might as well just lock them up forever.
Well, there is an argument for that, and some would say those who commit the most heinous offences that take the life of another actually should face a punishment whereby life imprisonment means life imprisonment. It is for the judiciary to decide whether that is the case or not. However, I do believe in the rehabilitation of offenders. I do believe that people should be given a second chance, but if you take that second chance, you do it in your birth name and you carry on thereafter and you become a contributing member of society, society is going to accept you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't believe that an ex-Bobby is saying that this person isn't going to be in any danger and he trusts the public. You've got somebody who was murdered and stabbed because he interfered with somebody who was breaking into his car. We've got knife crime all over the place. We've got vigilante activity all over the place. And the person who granted this order on Venables, for instance, Lady Justice Butler-Sloth, the former president, she had evidence and intelligence and formed the view that Venables' life was in danger, either from serious injury and or death. And how you can say that there's, I think you've mentioned finger wagging in the past, that the public's likely to finger wag. I'm afraid most of the public you can rely on to behave sensibly, but there's a sizable number of our public who have the right to know everything.
So much anger surrounding that case, Peter. I don't believe people would just look and say, oh, yes, you did that in the past. I think there's still so much emotion about that awful crime that I think people would, you know, I think they would, there are people that would want to
And
attack
people have
the person that did
specifically
it.
threatened these boys. If I know who they are and where they are, I will go out and kill them.
Peter?
That's, words are one thing, actions are another. I firmly believe in trusting the public. And whilst there may be a lot of anger towards these people, you know, to actually say to yourself, well, I know he lives round the corner, so now I'm going to go and slaughter that person, is not going to make any situation
But maybe
any
daub
better.
things on their house, make it impossible for them to get a job. I think it's that kind of thing that might happen, isn't it?
Well, if we look at the case of Venables anyway, he is currently incarcerated, and it would appear that perhaps this man is a serial offender, and then perhaps the rightful place for him to be is behind bars.
An order of this nature will not be imposed simply because he's going to find it more difficult to get a job or will have things daubed on his house. It has to be at a much higher level than that. That's why there are only 6 people.
Talking of people reoffending and monitoring how that works, there's been huge criticism of changes with the new probation system. It was reviewed and looked into partial privatisation. It's cost about £500 million for the taxpayer. But this morning they're saying that actually this has led to an absolute skyrocketing of reoffending. Do you think that it was entirely flawed, Peter?
The criminal justice system per se is in crisis. Our court system, the judges, the barristers, probation, policing, we are in an absolute state of crisis. This is almost getting towards being a national emergency.
So was the idea of privatising it then, bearing that in mind, actually potentially a good one, of taking that away from the public purse and putting it into a private business to try and run it?
It was folly, and it's been proved to be exactly that. At the end of the day, the probation service should be a state-run service because it is so vital to hopefully preventing offenders from committing further crimes, that it shouldn't be left in the hands of companies who want to turn a profit.
Do you agree with that, Lindsey, as well?
Absolutely.
It seems extraordinary, doesn't it, now, looking back?
At the moment, you're right, the whole system's in crisis from beginning to end, but the probation officers, the qualified probation officers, really haven't got the space, the time and the resources to put in what is necessary. And if
So who should take responsibility for that then?
The government. Okay, same as the government are absolutely responsible, particularly the Prime Minister, who presided over the cuts of over 20,000 police officer jobs since 2010. That's where the blame lies. It's the government. Funding needs to be found. The entire system is creaking at the seams and is almost at breaking point, and we are on the brink of a national emergency in regards to crime and the criminal justice system.
It won't be the private companies that are dealing with the young people we're talking about, though.
No.
It'll be the old school qualified probation officers who'll be dealing with this. Those will be government agencies. who will be watching Venables and his like.
The government says it's investing an extra £22 million for these services and the reoffending and the criminals in this sort of situation. But it sounds like at the coalface where you both have been, it very much it's not enough.
Other figures released in 2017 showed that young offenders, just dragging us back to that subject, young offenders who'd served a term of imprisonment of less than a year were reoffending at the rate of 70%. So that part of the system isn't working. And if you want to have a robust, just criminal justice system that delivers results, you've got to fund it properly.